Dr. Marketing Tips, paging Dr. Marketing Tips. Dr. Marketing Tips, you're needed in the marketing department.
Welcome to the Dr. Marketing Tips Podcast, your prescription to the answers you seek to grow your medical practice easier, better, and faster. This show is all about connecting practice administrators and medical marketing professionals with peers working in practices, learning from experiences, making mistakes, and sharing successes. Let's get started.
Hey there, welcome to the Dr. Marketing Tips Podcast. I am Jennifer.
And I'm Corey.
And today we're going to talk about budgets. Now you might be thinking, why are we talking about budgets in the middle of the year? But the fact is, with COVID, it's almost like we've reset the entire year and we've done about 5 years worth of work in the first 6 months of the year. But Corey, I've been having a lot of meetings with practice administrators in the last couple of weeks, kind of revisiting the 2020 budgets and doing a reset. And so if I'm talking about this with practice administrators, I would fully anticipate that our listeners are starting to think about what their budget spend is going to be from a marketing perspective for the second half of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been privy to some of those calls that you're on. And then I've also had a different set of my own with practice managers and physicians talking about advertising and what to do with that and if they should actually do anything with that. So I know we're going to talk about that in this episode as well.
Yeah, totally. So, I think that one thing to really think about is marketing is different right now than it was 6 months ago. And it's really important that we think things through and we don't just turn it back on. That's because every practice is different, whether you had to close your offices during COVID, whether you just had to, stop doing surgeries, whether you had a positive case and ended up having to rearrange kind of your processes and your systems and move employees around, whether you furloughed, every single practice is different. And so if you marketed before, you're probably going to be interested in marketing your practice again starting now. And if you didn't market your practice before, then it's probably something you're not even paying attention to. But I think there's some things that you have to consider before you either do something or you decide to just completely not do anything at all. There's a couple top level things that you really need to be thinking through.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that real quick. So I had a conversation with a gastroenterologist on Friday, and for them, because of everything that sort of happened with COVID and all of the craziness, they really basically missed out on the entire month of March, which is colon cancer awareness month. So that's like a big month for them because they get a lot of colonoscopies that way. And when I was talking to him, he was saying that in this new normal, they want their new message to be that screening is still important and you can't forget about the basics. And here's kind of what we're doing for you. So he's thinking let's combine sort of the messaging and some of the marketing and things that we've been doing, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But also with the fact that you can't forget about the basics. And I thought that was a really interesting take on how to move the marketing forward, specifically for his practices, but I'm sure for a lot of other ones out there as well.
Yeah, I think that it's this sense of branding and staying top of mind with your patients. And how do you stay top of mind? You're right. They missed out on their big push of a month, which was colon cancer awareness month. And, he wants to stay top of mind that people need to still be thinking about their health. So I think from a marketing perspective, there's kind of two things to really think about. One is, what's that message going to be that's going to allow you to stay top of mind with your patients so that when they're ready to make those appointments, they do it. And then two, I was having a conversation with somebody from one of the very large hospital systems near us over the weekend, and she indicated that their CEO came through last week and notified all of their thousands upon thousands of employees that they stand to lose about $1 billion with a B dollars as a result of COVID. And so that really got me to thinking, as the independent practices that we work with are continuing to kind of stay top of mind, brand their practice, looking to turn their marketing back on, what are the hospitals about to do in order, once they get kind of through this first wave, what are they going to do from a marketing perspective that's going to double down on bringing in those elective surgeries that have high margins for them? And so, the gastroenterologist, as you were just kind of referring to him, he wants to put a few dollars into kind of that top of mind awareness and saying like, look, if you still need to get your colonoscopy, but think about what is the hospital system about to do? And if we know that there's a high margin in colonoscopies, which there is, then chances are they're going to open the floodgates from a marketing perspective because they want that business to make up for that $1 billion loss in revenue. And so I think there's a lot of things to consider as we are reopening kind of the marketing floodgates for the second half of the year. And it's not as easy as, should I turn on my ads or should I be on social media? It's almost like you're training again for like the big race, and you really have to like give it some thought and do your proper stretching techniques and make sure you're hydrated and do everything that you need to do, because it's going to be a long, hard race and you have to get ready for what's about to come.
Yeah, and you know that if the hospitals are going to lose that much money, they, to get that much money back, are going to spend a lot of money. And you as an independent practice are not going to be able to keep up with their spend. So you have to, I think, recognize that the landscape is different. I think that's pretty obvious. And then two, probably go back and reestablish what is an effective goal for your marketing. So what do you actually want to do with this next couple of months, knowing that there's going to be perhaps increased competition out there from the hospitals? And then look at a couple of different options, and maybe you present those to kind of the key stakeholders and decide how to move forward from there. So what I'm saying is, it's not just, oh, it's over, let's turn the ads back on, and then you go and flip the switch. It's something that's going to require a little bit more than that.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about what that messaging might be when you reopen. Something we were talking about last week is kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And at the very top of the pyramid for hierarchy of needs that you need to satisfy is people need to feel safe. And as an independent practice or as a practice out there, making sure that your patients feel safe coming into the office should be your number one concern. And we know that you're putting in the safety protocols to be safe. Your employees know they're putting in safety protocols, but don't assume that your potential patients that are looking to schedule have any idea what it is that you've done to create a safe environment for them. And so I think the very first thing to consider is, how are you keeping your employees and your patients safe, and creating communication mechanisms to make sure that people are going to hear that safety message and it's going to be reinforced over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's a great point. They will have no idea what you're doing unless you tell them multiple times. And if there was ever a time where an FAQ page was a piece of your marketing, it's right now. And you may hear that and think that sounds kind of silly, but just if you just sort of compare apples to apples, and someone's looking at your practice and someone down the street, and you have an FAQ page that explains how you're keeping them safe, what you're doing, what happens if someone does come in and there's a COVID positive person, whatever the case may be. You have that, the other person does not, then odds are the patient's going to pick you just because they are, they're more informed, they feel a little bit safer with your practice. Another thing that we've been doing on the safety front with some of the groups that we work with is we've been making it very clear what those safety protocols are. And so that's number one on the website, a big slide or big image on the homepage saying that we're open and we're here for you, and here's what we're doing to keep you safe. Some people have actually submitted a video. So they've had someone on their team or a practice administrator take out their iPhone and record each step of the new check-in process and send us little clips. We put that together and we create a reel. It's only about 30 seconds long, but that way, when it comes to patient readiness, these practices are head and shoulders above some of the competition, because you can watch this video easily. We're talking about it on social media. We're talking about it on the website. We're talking about it in emails that are going out to patients. And you can very easily see exactly what to expect when you come into the office. And then in addition to that, we've also got the list of protocols. And like I mentioned earlier, the FAQ section, and all of those things kind of come together on different platforms. And we create opportunities to talk about these things and to inform patients. And social media is a really great tool for that right now, because not only can people comment and ask questions, but they can also share it with friends and loved ones they know that have or need appointments.
Yeah, and I think that the kind of, you hit the nail on the head. Like, those little videos have been extremely helpful, and they've made for great content, but it's all about patient readiness and preparing the patient for what they're about to walk into. And I think that going back to kind of like, what are the hospitals going to do in the future? I think it's good right now to do a quick reset. It doesn't have to be an enormous reset, but before you go out and really dive into the messaging, maybe do a little SWOT analysis of you versus the local hospital through the lens of post-COVID. And what kind of elective procedures do you have versus what do the hospitals have, and what are your differentiators? Because it goes back to, from a safety standpoint, do I feel more safe going to the hospital for an elective procedure, or do I feel more safe going to a small practice who is able to really double down on those protocols, and I can wait in my car before you call me into the main lobby, or things of that nature? And so I think you want to look at what those differentiators are, even if they're small. And you don't want to upset the hospitals, because you never want them against you. But how can you ride the same wave that they're going to ride by highlighting some of those differentiators for you?
Yeah, and if you think too, the average person, they're going to say, well, if I go to the hospital, or I have to go to the hospital, let's say for a procedure, I'm surrounded by a bunch of sickies. Everyone there, and for whether this is true or not, everyone there is sick. I don't want to do that. But if you go to an outpatient surgery center, well, I'm going to get, because I know what the practice is doing to keep me safe, and what's happening when I get there. They're taking my temperature. Everyone's wearing a mask. If you have symptoms, you're not basically allowed in the building. So I automatically kind of feel safer going to this place that is specific to gastroenterology, orthopedics, whatever. And that's going to weigh on people's decision, because they're going to say, well, if I have a choice, I'm not going to go where all the sick people are. I'm going to go somewhere else. But they're only going to know that that's different if you tell them that that's different.
Yeah, you just said it. Like, it's going to weigh on their decision. It's only going to weigh on their decision if you plant the seed to
Right.
weigh on their decision. And I think that's where marketing, there's a real opportunity here from a marketing standpoint. And I will say this too, since March, and I might be a little biased, but since March, I feel as if marketing has been integral to the practice, to being able to stay open and to get the messaging out there quickly. We've been called on for more times than I can count for emergency projects during this entire pandemic, stemming around this idea of communication. And so this is really the first time in a couple months that we've been able to sit back and breathe and start truly thinking through these things. And I think it's good advice for any practice out there. Take a step back, look at what differentiates you, figure out what those little nuggets of information that you can plant in the minds of patients to lean people towards your differentiator.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to think too, what the hospital is going to do is they're just going to spend, right? So they're going to show up on billboards, they're going to be on the radio, they're going to be on TV, which means, you probably weren't in those places anyway, but it means that there's more opportunity for you to be in the places where you're strong at, wherever that is, because it's going to be different for every practice. So some practices are going to be really strong on a social media platform like Facebook. Maybe some other ones are going to be really strong on digital ads, and they just work with this kick-ass company, and they can double down with that company and really show up, because they know that their hospital system is only doing regional cable or whatever the case may be. It's going to be different for everybody. But the point is that the hospital is going to, they're not going to be super focused. They're just going to spend a lot of money in a lot of the obvious places. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the places that aren't so obvious.
Yeah, I think also, I don't want to talk about the hospitals too much, but I think there's an opportunity as we talk about kind of what's working right now and what's not working, I think there's an opportunity again to ride the hospital wave a little, because, so many hospitals are not for profit, and those not for profit hospitals are required to reinvest back into their communities at a very high level. And what the hospitals are very good at doing is getting public relations. And so you're going to see, I'm certain of it, you're seeing it already. that your hospitals are all over the news, whether they are talking about COVID, talking about cases, talking about, giving those good stories, they're featuring and highlighting their nursing staff, their providers, the patients that are coming out. They're going to ride that wave of community involvement. And because that's one of their requirements. And then from a PR standpoint, they are absolutely going to they're going to be on TV every single day. And so I think it's important, and Corey and you and I've had great success with, specifically with ear, nose, and throat, head and neck cancer month. We had a meeting one time as an example with a bunch of hospital folks, and we found out that they were going to do a big spend for head and neck cancer, and they had big plans to go out there and to put out, a lot of ads and just to go big. And we took a step back and said, let's come up with a content strategy that's going to really position our client to take advantage of those ad spends, even if, it's not necessarily our client's name. Every time somebody looks up something for head and neck cancer, our client would show up on the first page of Google. And I think that the strategy from a content, what's working right now, I think the strategy is the exact same. We know the hospitals are about to spend. In your practice, what's the most important area that you want to focus on. What the hospitals are going to focus on. So double down at this moment, double down on the content that you create around your specific specialty and get ready to ride the wave because it is coming.
Hey guys, Corey here, co-host of the Dr. Marketing Tips Podcast, and I wanted to interrupt this episode just for a minute to tell you about Insight Training Solutions. So Insight Training Solutions is an ongoing employee engagement and training platform for your medical practice, meaning employees can log on and take these medical practice specific trainings whenever and wherever they are. And each training is meant to increase employee engagement, improve practice reputation, and develop some patient service mindsets. If we're being honest, something that we all know some of the employees may lack. Not calling anybody out by name, but one of the cool things about Insight Training Solutions is they're always developing new content, and they just released 10 steps to a phenomenal patient experience, where you'll learn how to create a phenomenal patient experience, strengthen job security, and discover customer service secrets for your entire team. So this course is in addition to the other ones they already have, which include communication across generations and how to understand today's multi-generational workforce and how to develop overall patient experience. This is another course, the new approach to customer service. We've also got 8 ways to wow patients, and you can sign up for a free trial to see what everything is about at insighttrainingsolutions.io. That's insighttrainingsolutions.io, or just Google Insight Training Solutions. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to something that we've always said is, so if you're listening to this and you're asking yourself, okay, cool, I want to do that, but like, what is the message? It still makes sense to focus on patient-first marketing and messaging. And what I mean by that is focus on outcomes and what the patient will feel and experience whenever they're done with X procedure. So that you have, let's say, 1 or 2 procedures that you really want to market and focus on right now. So create content and messaging around those things. If you can, use real patients, because that's very powerful. And so that's going to be one thing you're going to want to focus on. The other one is going to be what we were talking about earlier with the access and the fact that we're keeping you safe and we're open, we're here for you. That's going to be number 2. And then you also want to focus on, if you can, a little bit of community involvement if you are in fact doing anything. And like Jen said, the hospitals are going to really double down on that, but that doesn't mean that there's not room for you to do that as well. Another thing that we've seen that's working really well, specifically on social media, is engaging employees. So I'm going to give this example of an orthopedic practice that we work with. We went to them with an idea and said, let's have as many people as possible hold up a sign that says, we're here for you. And we want, they can do it in teams, they can do it individually, but we want them to handwrite it, hold it up, and then they can dance, they can take a still picture, whatever they want to do. We left it up to their creativity. And we got, I don't know, like 50 photos and clips from different teams and different locations and different managers and all sorts of employees from different levels. Physicians were involved in this as well. And we put it together just to say that COVID can't keep us from caring. And we made this fantastic little, like, I think it was a 60-second video. And it has done so well. And it's in one video, it's sort of accomplished every little piece of the messaging that we've wanted to do. And it's also engaged employees, which was a win-win.
Yeah, I think that video has been fantastic. And what's great about it is it translates to so many of the practices that we work with.
Right.
So, the concept is there. We just gave you some free information that you can immediately take back to your practice right now and execute really by the end of the day, if not the end of the week at the worst case scenario. If you don't do anything else, do the video that says we're open and we're here for you and here's what that looks like. COVID can't stop us from caring.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Another area, that's really working, kind of going back to like this concept of content marketing, any kind of patient first articles, blog posts, things of that nature. FAQs are fantastic, but also you've had a lot of success with webinars, Corey, in the past couple of months. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we've done them for a multitude of different practices for a multitude of different reasons. But the long short of it is it's really easy to create a webinar, and it does several things that are really important. Number one, so I think you can do a live webinar or you can do an on-demand webinar. So you have to figure out which one of those you want to do. There's pros and cons to each. If you do a live one, I'm going to use that as our example for this episode. Set a date and a time and then a topic. So you've got a physician, he does total shoulder replacements and he wants to focus on that. So you're going to have him create a presentation that is all about total shoulder replacements. He sends it to you. You kind of clean it up because it's probably going to be in some janky PowerPoint template. And then you can start marketing and you can say, join us on such and such day at such and such time. And Dr. Jones is going to answer everything you've ever wanted to know about total shoulder replacements. And then you set up a form so people have to RSVP to watch this webinar. And what that does is it gives you something to market and to talk about. And you don't have to spend a ton of money to get the message out there. You can send an email to your existing patient list. You can put it on social media, put it on your website, because ideally you've got at minimum, several hundred people a week probably going to your practice website. And some of them are going to be looking for total shoulder replacements. So what's great is it gives you something to talk about leading up to an event. Then you host the event. So the doctor, he or she feels like they were included, they were part of this thing. Honestly, it doesn't really matter how many people show up. Of course you want people there, but if they're not there, then you can take this webinar and turn it into a piece of on-demand content that is available after the fact. So you put it back on your website, you put it back on social media and say, available on demand, whenever you want to watch it at your convenience, hear from Dr. Jones, everything you've ever wanted to know about a total shoulder replacement. So it can kind of live on in perpetuity. It's a gift that kind of keeps on giving. It gives you something to talk about, not only leading up to it, but after the fact. And we've done that, like I said, for several different types of practices. And one of the webinars that we did had over 200 people on it. And it's just been a fantastic way to get the message out there without really spending any money.
Yeah, and I think if you record it and you do it well, we've got one that we did last week where it was two guys on the webinar kind of talking, and they broke it into a Q&A session basically around a PowerPoint. And so we're able to now break up. They had 7 questions, plus they did their audience questions. So we probably have, let's say, 12 questions. We can break those 12 questions into 12 individual videos, and then we have something new to market on social media, kind of answering the questions that people were asking, which is helping position their practice as a real authority in the space. And it's something where we, which is always the strategy, create the content once and reuse the heck out of it. And these give you that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and it's a great way to leverage the audiences that you already have And for that webinar that Jen was just talking about, that's another one where we didn't spend a dime to make that happen. The only cost was time.
Yep. And they had 60, 70 people that actually showed up and were on the webinar. And then, they've got every day, it seems like people are signing up for the on demand. So I think it's just the gift that keeps on giving. I think kind of the next thing of what's really working right now is public relations. I was kind of walking through my living room, I'm still working at home, walking through my living room, and the news is on in the background. And I heard today that it's a national story on Good Morning America about a fertility clinic that lost a couple's eggs and then implanted the wrong egg. Well, we have a fertility physician that we work with, and I'm certainly going to reach out to him today and see if he wants to kind of do a safety walkthrough at his center to show kind of the safety precautions that are put in place to make sure that egg retrieval is safe and that you get the eggs that you believe are yours to start with. And I think that's a great PR opportunity. Look at what's happening at the national scale. Find a local, if it makes sense for you local, and to go after it. And then I think Keith had some really good, I think he had a big win last week too. We have a doctor he does kind of concierge medicine, at-home visits, especially for high risk patients. We were identified this is an area that we wanted to get him some press, and Keith was able to put together a story where the doctor actually got the footage on his phone, him and his nurse, of him visiting an at-risk patient, and he does at-home COVID testing. And it looks like that story is going to probably run today or tomorrow. And so PR is a great opportunity for you to stay top of mind, and you just get so much bang for your buck, and it's another way to win the content game. And so I think there's kind of 3 areas, Corey, that are really working that everybody needs to be paying attention to for the second half of the year. One is content marketing is king right now. Anything and everything you can do to create great content, and the content is different now than it was 6 months ago. I think public relations is really working. And then, doubling down on social media and using social media to truly engage your audience and to get your message out very quickly. And if those, if that's all you were going to focus on for the second half of the year, that would be my advice. Content, public relations, and social media.
Yeah, I echo that as well. And the social media, you have to remember that people, they are at home still. Not everybody, but a majority of people are at home, and they're spending a lot of time on their devices just sort of scrolling. So the landscape is different than it was, 4 or 5 months ago. So there's definitely an opportunity to take advantage of that fact. And so I wanted to mention that. And then also with the PR strategy, because I think some people hear PR and they say well, I have no idea what I'm doing with PR. And so I want to say that, one, if you can get that PR win, it's fantastic, because that story that you were just talking about, that Keith, our director of public relations, got for that home care client, the channel, the station that's going to run on, they're going to run that story 8 times at least. So it's fantastic. If you can't get PR though, or you're not sure what you're doing, then kind of use these other platforms, use the content marketing and social media to create your own PR. So if you cannot go out and approach your, local CVS affiliate or whatever, because you have no idea how to do that, which I don't blame you, then make your own news story and put together a little video, or just write an article. I mean, there's stories out there that people want to hear and engage with, and odds are you have a couple of super fans and super patients at your practice that love everything that you do because they had a successful outcome. So engage them, and either 1, see if they want to be a part of a story, or 2, make sure that they see the story that you've created, and they're going to go out there and shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I could not agree more. So before we wrap it up, Corey, let's talk about ads, because I think that when we're thinking through what should your marketing budget be for the second half of the year, I'm not advocating that you need to spend tons of money on shiny objects. I'm saying look at the strategy, look at what's working right now, and get in and do what's working. Spend money on time, spend energy and time creating great stuff. But also we need to look at when is the right time to turn our advertising back on? Are we going to turn it on right now? And are people even looking for orthopedic surgeons? Are they even searching, looking for these types of ads? So what do you say to that, Corey?
Well, I think it goes back to kind of what we started at the top of the show with the gastroenterologist, and sort of reminding people that, yeah, everything looks kind of different and it's pretty weird out there right now, but you can't forget about the basics. The screenings still matter. If you're still living in chronic pain, you probably don't want to do that. Especially now, so if people are becoming, I don't want to say used to, but if they are okay with the idea of going outside with a mask and sort of reacclimating themselves in public to go to Lowe's Home Improvement, for an example, well, then they're probably in the back of their mind as they're walking around Lowe's going, oh yeah, my knee hurts, so like those thoughts are going to start to creep back in. And the landscape is different. I know I said that a few minutes ago, but it's true. The landscape is different. And a lot of people are not advertising as much as they were pre-COVID and everything that's going on right now. So we're seeing that some of the ad rates are actually a little bit more affordable for impressions and clicks. So there's a chance you can get a little bit more bang for your buck. And people are still going stir crazy. They're still just sitting around on their phones constantly, more than they would have been 6 months ago. So it does make sense now to at least think about how you can take advantage of that and sort of leverage some of the assets that you already have. And going back to what we were saying earlier, that's one of the great things about creating this content is, let's say you create a really good piece of content that you're trying to, you're turning your own like PR story, and you've got a really nice, let's say it's an article on your website. Well, you can turn that article into an ad on social media, and these things can all kind of play together, and they can elevate each aspect of one another and all sort of coalesce and lift the entire campaign that you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think looking at what it is that you want to advertise and understanding what people are dealing with at home, whether it's homeschool or uncertainty or whatever it is, I think that's really important. I think sometimes too that our clients and all of us, we forget that when you're running like Google ads, you're not paying necessarily for those impressions. You're only paying for when people are actually clicking through to your website. If you have it set up that way, then you should be putting some dollars in there because it's an easy way to get to the top of the page. And I'll say this too. I don't know, Corey, how much the hospitals are going to be spending on ads, online ads. So there's no reason you can't put, some skin in the game, and you're only paying for what actually shows up at your doorstep. And then, so think about ads in the long term. And I think that maybe targeted ads on Facebook, I still don't know where my opinion lies on that, but I think that boosting that great content that you're creating in a very targeted way is extremely smart. Because if you go back to what's the message we need to convey? We need to stay top of mind with our patients. We need to tell them that we're open and we're here for you, and this is what an appointment looks like. And ultimately, we need to say, we are a safe environment for you to come. If you're not feeling well, if you need a routine visit, if you're, been putting off your colonoscopy, this is why you choose us. And so go back to, this is how we're different. And then once you've got that message figured out, that's when you put dollars into your ad spend. And I think,
well, sorry, I just want to make a point on that real quick. So yeah, remember too that like to get started to do something like this, it's not like you need thousands and thousands of dollars for some ad budget. Like it's this big investment. It doesn't have to be. So let's say you do have a piece like what Jen was just talking about, where you've got the video or the article, whatever it is, that says that we're safe and we're here, and you want to boost that, even if you only want to reach people that are already fans of your page, because you know that that is a very safe audience and they will engage positively with whatever they see because they're a fan of your practice already. I mean, you could boost that for $5 or $10. So it's not like where you have to figure out as you're going back to visit the budget, and you have to find $25,000, $50,000 to do something. It literally, you can start for, I think the minimum is like 4 days and $4. So
yeah, 4 days and $4. You're not spending the money on that coffee anymore, so you might as well put it in your ads. Yeah. I think the biggest kind of takeaway kind of goes back to how I was saying, like, I've been talking to a lot of practices. I had a meeting last week with about 6 orthopedic surgeons. They're the docs that are part of the committee that makes the decision for the marketing budget for this large practice. And the point that I had to drive home, and that we kept driving home, is that, look, we're going to present the second half of the year budget that they're going to sign off on. And this kind of outlines the plan for the rest of the year. But if we've learned anything in these last few months, it's that sometimes you have, the best laid plans don't actually happen the way that they're supposed to, and that we all have to, remain fluid and keep an open mind. So I think we can plan out the rest of the year, but we have to know that, shit happens and you've got to be ready to pivot at any single moment. So knowing that, though, focus on the tried and true that to be working. Produce great content. Communicate with your patients and with your employees, and take a step back and make decisions that are strategic and not always reactive. And if you do that, you'll be okay in the end of this thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we know that you have to remain fluid right now, right? So take a few minutes, and because you probably haven't done this, and write down maybe let's say top 10 priorities that you want to accomplish by the end of the year. And then if you look at that list, well, what are the top 2 things on that list? Because if those came to mind first, those are probably the top 2 priorities. And so focus on those things specific to when it comes to marketing. And if you just pick 1 or 2 priorities and work backwards from there, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And we'll go ahead and end it there. With that, I'm Jennifer.
I'm Corey.
We'll see you next time on the Dr. Marketing Tips Podcast. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the DrMarketingTips.com podcast. If there's anything from today's show you want to learn more about, check out DrMarketingTips.com for our podcast resource center with all the notes, links, and goodies we mentioned during the show. If you're not already a subscriber to our show, please consider pressing the subscribe button on your podcast player so you never miss one of our future episodes. And if you haven't given us a rating or review yet on iTunes, please find a spare minute and help us reach and educate even more of our medical practice peers. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Doctor's orders.